Hello, ladies and gents. I'm Phil Plate Liquor Corwin, and this is No Drama Just Movies with a brand new movie review. Brand new format as well, so let me know what you think. If you like it, don't like it, just let me know in the comments. Greatly appreciated, thanks. So, I watched Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey recently, and I had some thoughts.
I know you never get a second chance at a first impression, but well, what do you think?
This is the segment where I share my initial thoughts about the movie, very brief. Here we go. I think the trailer ruined me for my first impression. I went into this expecting a massive horse and battle scenes, an action adventure. But it's still Nolan. I definitely enjoyed it more on my second impression, once I let go of all those expectations. But let's take a closer look, starting with the good, the bad, and the also present.
And for the record, we're the good guys.
We're bad guys. It's what we do.
This is the segment where we look at characters and the acting. Matt Damon was great here. I believed the strength of a soldier, but I also believed his vulnerability when he's Calypso's captive. When Odysseus asks her about his men and how long he's been with her, he feels more pitiful, and it's hard not to draw a comparison with dementia. This is the once hero of Troy, now prisoner of his own mind. Anne Hathaway delivered a very strong performance as well. It would have been easy to shove her into the background and just make her the pining wifey, waiting patiently for her husband's return. But she's filled with cunning and determination, and when we get moments where she longs for Odysseus, she does it with anger, with a burning energy. When he tells her to remarry if he doesn't come back, she slaps him. You could imagine her being in charge in the absence of her husband, and I loved her line when she talks to her son Telemachus. She's been sitting on that empty throne for 20 years, keeping the lights on, keeping her people safe. But she gets overlooked because she's just a woman. Tom Holland was fine as Telemachus. I think he's a good actor. Spider-Man Brand New Day review coming soon, but maybe the story didn't do him any favours. Telemachus hates the suitors, but he can't do anything about them because of Zeus's law. He wants to find out what happened to his father. Unfortunately, that means he relies on other characters to do the work. He travels to see Menelaus, and then Menelaus gets to do the speech. Always good to see John Bernthal, by the way. But that makes Telemachus a much more passive character. I found it hard to believe in the end that he could take care of himself, let alone a whole kingdom. If there was a character arc for him, it happened off screen. I enjoyed Robert Pattinson's ratty little suitor. He's a cowardly bully, strong when he feels safe and surrounded by his mates, but as soon as danger looms, he scurries away. I loved how slimy he was, how oily slick. Zendaya was also present. Look, I think she knew that this wouldn't be a massive part, but she got to work with Nolan and her husband. I can't blame her for that. Also, it kind of works. Her screen time might be small and she doesn't have a lot of lines, but the role is still significant. When Nolan reveals why Odysseus sees Athena the way he does, it comes as a shock that lays bare the wounds of his guilt. So it helps that Zendaya is so recognizable, because the girl in the temple gets maybe a second or so of screen time, and it might have been easy to miss her or not connect the dots. There were a lot of characters we only see briefly. Elliot Page as Sinan, Lupita Nyong'o as Helen, even John Leguizamo kind of dipping in and out of the narrative. But the performances were still solid, and I forgive the movie because of the story it is and the structure that comes with it. Each character still played their part in service of the plot. Ooh, well that's a great segue into So That Happened.
That was wild.
That was nuts and dangerous.
This is the segment where we talk about the plot. I gotta be honest, ladies and gents, I'm not that much of a fan of episodic storytelling. I know it's a preference, but there were some issues that might go beyond that. I understand that these epics might have just been written that way, a very serialized structure of adventure after adventure. But it doesn't help that a lot of it feels very repetitive. Case in point, how often do Odysseus and his men go on land only to encounter a threat and then run back to the boats? I don't think I could even tell you what order these happen in, and I don't think it matters. You could easily switch them around without losing much of the story. Particularly the Cyclops scene felt reduced. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the original story, there's the whole thing with Odysseus telling the Cyclops that his name is Nobody, and the Cyclops then running around telling everyone that nobody blinded him. Moments like that would have shown off Odysseus' cleverness a bit more. Okay, that hurt a little, but now that we've got the criticism out of the way, let's heap on the praise. I really enjoyed the plot. Initially, I wanted the movie to start with a Battle of Troy, and I was a little bit disappointed that we only got glimpses, especially since with every flashback of the horse, I was ready to get into it. I'll get to that part in the next segment. But this is a story about much more than clashing swords and burning castles. Starting with Ithaca, Odysseus' home, was absolutely necessary to set up the stakes. We need to see the people and the place he left behind. We need to understand what happens if he doesn't come back soon. It also makes the irony and the reaction from his people work double duty. When Odysseus does finally return and one of the slave women finds out it's him, it hits even harder and is more rewarding because we have seen the setup. I was just waiting for everyone else to find out who this strange beggar was, and Nolan did not disappoint. I loved the utter catharsis of Odysseus taking out the trash. You could argue that Odysseus spending some time fighting back grown men with nothing but a pointy arrow made him too much of a superhero or a Jason Bourne, but I'll allow it, because it is so satisfying to see the suitors get their comeuppance. Again, thanks to the strong setup. In all the island adventures, I loved the Circe scene the most. Not only did Samantha Morton deliver a stellar performance, I loved how it was shot as well. I'm pretty sure there was some reversed footage while all the soldiers are eating, which just added to this really disgusting display. And the transformation this clay moulding Circe does all served to make this scene more horrific. I thought the adaptation here made this scene stronger as well. Circe is not depicted as an evil witch who does evil witch things for evil's sake. She becomes a victim, a woman who has suffered trauma and who, in her fear of strange men, picks the offensive route. I hurt you before you can hurt me. With that said, let's get into what it all means. Follow me down the rabbit hole, won't you?
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is the segment where we look at some of the deeper meanings of the story. I said before that I was waiting for the Trojan horse scene the moment the movie started. When we do get to see it, it is satisfyingly epic. We see it from inside the horse, which removes the glamour of it, but also adds tension. And speaking of tension, as they're holding back the Trojans while trying to get the gate open to let Agamemnon and his forces in, that was peak nail-biting. Ludwig Göransson's score is fantastic here, a heartbeat speeding up until you can't take it anymore. But it's Nolan, so we get to see the destruction of Troy from Odysseus' point of view as well. And it's stripped here of all the heroics, all the triumph. Odysseus is shown overwhelmed by the sheer brutality. This, together with Odysseus' speech to Penelope, is where the movie came together for me, where it transcended the action movie and became an exploration of guilt, similar to Nolan's Oppenheimer. Because we finally understand why Odysseus didn't want to return home. On first viewing, it felt strange that he would pick a different route from Agamemnon. It felt strange that he would shoot the Cyclops even after they had escaped already. Only on a rewatch do you understand his motivation. He had a brilliant idea, much like Oppenheimer, and it changed how warfare was done. It broke the most important rule of hospitality, which in turn broke the laws between men. Odysseus shoulders that guilt. He was an honourable man, allowing his opponent a fighting chance. The plucking of his bow isn't just a clever way for people to identify him later. It reveals how fair he is. I think the breaking of Zeus's law is why on every island they go to, the inhabitants react with violence. They're not monsters. They're just scared. It's just the new norm because you can't trust strangers anymore. I love the little detail that everyone is so scared of the men from the sea. Even Penelope is afraid of the threat. And all this time watching the movie, I'm wondering who these men from the sea are, only for Nolan to reveal it was a hero all along. I already mentioned how much I enjoyed the final scene of Odysseus cleaning house, but I'm still wondering how much Penelope knew. She agrees to marry a suitor, and she suggests the test with a bow. This is after she met the beggar. At this point, she knows that Odysseus is alive somewhere. But there's also that little moment when Odysseus fails to string the bow the first time. Penelope turns away, deflated. Was she already hoping that this beggar was her husband? Let me know in the comments how you see that reaction. Right, I think I've had my fill of myths and legends. It's time to head back to the real world.
So what does that mean for us, exactly?
This is the segment where we look at the real-world impact of the movie, stuff like box office and what might be happening next. Nolan is rolling. After making almost $1 billion with Oppenheimer in its entire run, he's pretty much hit that target with the Odyssey already, after about 2 weeks. It's currently at a little over $700 million. And yes, it's more accessible. It's a Greek myth that most of us know or have heard of, if only through references and parodies. But I'm curious to know, if you had to rank just Oppenheimer and the Odyssey, how would that turn out? I also have to wonder, does that mean we're going to get a lot more sword and sandal epics? Is this the renaissance of myths and legends? There's still the Iliad, for example, the prequel to the Odyssey. I don't think Nolan is going to do it, but it seems a no-brainer that Hollywood would attempt something there. It's probably just a question of who could take on the job. Let me know if you have any ideas or what kind of epic stories you'd like to see on the big screen. I'm also hoping that this opens more avenues for Tom Holland as he's trying to get away from Spider-Man and into meatier roles. I'd love to see him take the lead in a grittier, more grown-up movie, and hopefully this opens the right doors for him to work with great directors. But let's leave the cinema there and head out past the concession stand to see how many drinks I can afford.
I don't know about you, but I could use a drink.
So, how many ices would I give Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey? I would give this a solid, well-deserved, epic 9.5 ices out of 10. I watched this movie twice, and believe it or not, the second time, I felt the length even less. I think that's a good sign. I gave myself to the story, and it swept me up, like Poseidon cradling Odysseus in his frothy waves. I had no issue with the casting whatsoever, and even the modern language, like specifically the daddy, didn't get in the way of my enjoyment of this movie. Just like Oppenheimer, it's one that will stay with me for a very long time after watching it. And that's all. Roll credits.